The winter solstice in the modern age is either referred to as the first day of the winter season because it's the longest night, or midwinter because the autumn equinox is viewed as the beginning of winter in some cultures in various calendars. So it all depends on which calendar you use. The African calendar describes the solstice as the beginning of winter, just as the summer solstice is described as the beginning of summer. So although we've been experiencing gradually increasing cold weather leading up to the winter solstice, we're only now going to start to experience the scientific components of regeneration and renewal that winter brings. Winter is the part of the natural cycle that occurs before the rebirth of spring, when everything greens again. This is the season when wildlife is officially settled into its different forms of hibernation. Even we as human beings have retreated back into our homes, closed our doors, and are doing our best to keep warm while we await the return of the sun, the return of life. The winter solstice is the actual origin of Christmas. It's the meaning of Christmas. This is when they celebrate Christmas in the Northern Hemisphere. And this is when families get together. This is when families are indoors and they sit around the fire. A solstice occurs twice a year, just like the equinoxes. Astronomically, the summer solstice is the hottest, longest day of the year because the sun is at its zenith and it's at its closest point to us than it is throughout the year. In the opposite effect, the winter solstice is the coldest, shortest day of the year because the sun is the furthest away from us than it is at any other point throughout the year. It's technically like the midnight of the year. Between midnight and 3 a.m. are the darkest hours of the night because the sun is on the other side of the planet. The darkest points in our cycle, both midnight and the winter solstice, are powerful times to phahla and pray because they serve the same purpose as the new moon. The new moon is when the moon is at its darkest, which is its phase of renewal. Spiritualists always speak of setting your intentions during the new moon. That same principle applies to all of the darkest phases in nature. The new moon, the phase between midnight and 3 a.m., and the winter solstice. This also includes the entire season of winter because this is the time of renewal. This is the time to set intentions that align with renewal of any kind. And really and truly, only you can know what that means for you in this particular stage of your life. So just think about what process of renewal you've begun or hope to begin. What change do you want to see? What part of your life or yourself do you want to put to rest so that something new can grow in its place? Because manifestation magic is always about treating yourself like a garden, right? When you think of a garden, some plants last longer than others. Some will survive maybe a full year cycle and will just require constant watering. But some are just seasonal and shouldn't stay longer than their season. They need to be plucked at the root, just so something new and healthy can grow in its place. Our ancestors understood the importance of aligning with the components of death that come with this season. In ancient Kemet, they had a tradition that was quite funerary. It was called Nen Sokar, or the Festival of Sokar, which was held nearing the winter solstice. The name Sokar comes from the Amduat. The Amduat is a detailed account of the journey that the sun travels through at night, because our ancestors would split the sky into two sections. It was the sky above, the sky that's visible to us, the visible sky, and the sky below. The sky below would be referred to as the underworld, the shadow world, the Duat. This is where we can no longer see our sun god. And he has a different name at every hour that describes each phase of his journey. Sokar was one of the names of the sun when he's at the furthest point away from us during the winter solstice. Sokar was also called the coffined one because he's the furthest away from us at this point. This is our darkest hour. This is when he's in hibernation. This time was very powerful for the acknowledgement of the powers of isolation, of inertia, decay, confinement, and consolidation. And these are all themes and energies that continue in the season of Set, which kicks off right at the winter solstice. For those of you who are familiar with the Kemetic story of creation, maybe if you've been following my videos, because I've spoken about it quite a few times, also on Grobos SA, the story of creation speaks of Asa, our sun god, being killed and dismembered by his brother Set. Set, who is the deity of the season that we're going into now. In the story of creation, Set kills his brother, dismembers him, and scatters his body parts. His wife has to find all his different body parts, reassemble him. She wraps him up. This is where the story of the world's first mummy comes from. His spirit returns to impregnate her, which is also where the first story of Immaculate Conception comes from. And at this stage, this phase of the cycle, when he is awaiting to be reawakened by his wife and his wife's sister, this is the stage of the creation story that accounts for this time that we're in right now. It's that hibernation stage. It's that stage of awaiting rebirth. And it's a very magical time because a lot of magical processes then take place in this time. So although it's viewed as a negative time, there are a lot of important phases of the natural cycle that take place in this time that can't take place in any other time in the natural cycle. So this is a melancholic season that's just meant for isolation, really. Because the winter solstice is the shortest day of the year, which means we experience the longest night. So this night should encourage the beginning of a season of introspection and reflection. Our ancestors would speak of how the season was also, the realm of the dead was more accessible in this time. It was common practice amongst our Kemetic ancestors to visit tombs in this time. They'd visit the tombs and graves of their loved ones. They'd pour water and grain or bird seed around the tomb. Souls of the deceased were said to travel into our physical realm through birds. This is why some mediums and healers in our African society can divine messages from birds, and some of us even dream of being birds ourselves. Dreams of flying are very common among spiritually gifted people. Maintaining this connection with the deceased was very important to our ancestors then, and even now we come to learn as African children that the living depend on the reservoir of experience and wisdom of our ancestors to cope with the realities of this world. So the tarot cards, in case anybody's interested in tarot, the two cards are the Hermit and the Fool. The combination of these cards emphasize the importance of isolation, reflection, and renewal. I encourage you, if you're interested in tarot, to search the meanings of these cards and allow them to help guide your manifestation and your healing work this season. I think the biggest thing I ask of anyone this season is please do not underestimate the power of shutting out the noise and the chatter and allowing spirit to teach you right now. If you allow yourself to be still, you will learn a lot about who you are and how to move forward in order to reach your goal or your purpose. Some of us really need to just turn down the volume on the chatter of other people, their opinions, people that have come to believe that they can control you with their words. You need to mute them and redirect your focus to your spirit guides. Your spirit guides speak to you from within. There are real messages, especially in this season, real messages that your guides, your ancestors are waiting to communicate to you, only if you give them the opportunity. So a winter solstice offering at your altar would be a really good way to invite your guides into your space. Make sure that your space is not too cluttered. I know how easy it is to hoard in the winter season because it's cold, things pile up very quickly. Just make sure that the space that you're doing your manifestation work or your rituals in, that the space is clean. Any room that your altar is in should be kept clean as often as possible. And your altar itself should always have a space for a plate of food, a fresh plate of food. So you'll begin by saying an opening prayer, however it is that you pray. And while you pray, you ignite the 4 elements of creation: water, fire, earth, and air. So you can light a candle, burn incense, place some water on the altar. This is also another thing you can personalize because the 4 elements manifest in different ways. And if you're aware of them and you understand them, you can customize how you incorporate the 4 elements. Then you phahla to invite your spirit guides, your ancestors to be present in the space so they can also help you with the follow through of this ritual. Then you'll need a container of some sort that will represent your coffin. It's best if the container is made out of wood or stone or grass or clay or even soil, if you can be creative about that, just as long as it isn't plastic or anything that can be harmful to nature. Then you write down all the areas of your life and within yourself that you would like to see transformation in, especially the things that you want to pluck or uproot so that something new and healthy can grow in its place. Then you address your guides, convey this to them so they understand what you're doing. Read what you've written down out loud only once, and then you fold the piece of paper, fold it away from you, and you place it in the coffin. So the two most symbolic actions within this mini ritual is the placing of your intentions in the coffin and the burial of that coffin. So when you do both things, you do them intentionally. You can even hum a funeral song when you place the intentions in the coffin, and when you bury them, you would be burying them the next day. When music is incorporated into any spiritual work, it always raises the vibrations and the frequency of what you're doing. Spirit responds to sound, rhythm, and it can really help to charge the intention of what you're doing so that there's a higher resonance. After you've done that, you say a closing prayer. Your closing prayer would be much like your opening prayer, just to conclude what you've done. After your closing prayer, you will place a fresh plate of food on the altar, preferably a hot plate of food that has some meat on it. This is also something that should be done at night. The ritual you do at night. The burial of the little coffin you do the next day in daylight. But this is something that you do at night. So I would advise that you do it after cooking dinner. And you make sure that the first plate of food goes first to the altar. Before anyone eats, before you eat, before anyone is served, the first plate of food goes to your altar. And then everyone else can eat after that. So those are the fundamentals. Like I said, you can personalize it. Rituals are very personal, but these are the fundamentals. These are the checkpoints that will make sure that you don't miss anything, or that there aren't any spirit guides that feel unappeased or unacknowledged during your spirit work or your communication and your communion with spirit. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to get back to them. And I will see you in the next video. The next videos are going up on our membership section, so I will see our members in the next video. Love and light and light and love.